today years old when I found out that I'm not the only one that has to watch tennis on mute due to the terrible commentators. The hate coming from the commentators' booth for our players has been so real for so long. And the only way that I can watch tennis is just to turn off the sound entirely. But thanks to this comment, I'm seeing that a lot of other people have done this too. Because let these commentators tell it, we only win because we're athletic. We have terrible games. And even when we're the best in the world, like Coco is, they come out and predict that the 361st player in the world is going to win.
Coco Gauff won the WTA Finals in Saudi Arabia by defeating the top 2 players in the world in back-to-back matches, lifting the trophy at just 20 years old. But instead of simply celebrating the biggest win of her career, she shared a powerful message on social media that revealed a deeper story. In her post, she spoke about finally silencing the bad season narrative, proving critics wrong, and shutting down the constant noise that had followed her for months. That single message exposed an uncomfortable truth about modern sports culture. Why does a world number 3 player, a Grand Slam finalist, and a multiple title winner still feel forced to defend herself from being labeled a failure?
Never really give our athletes their flowers for how incredible they are. And when you've been to 3 Grand Slam finals by the age of 21, you are exceptional. There are few tennis players in history who've accomplished as much as this young woman has, but you wouldn't know it by listening to some of that commentary. That's why I and so many other people just watch the match and drown out the noise. And I hope Coco and the rest of our players continue to do the same.
A painful question sits at the center of Coco Gauff's story. Why does a 20-year-old champion feel the need to spend 30 minutes every day blocking people who attack her online? The answer goes far beyond tennis. What she faces daily shines a harsh light on a pattern in sports media that has gone on for too long without real accountability. Young black female athletes are often held to completely different standards, judged more harshly, scrutinized more intensely, and granted far less grace than their peers. And the moment they speak on anything outside the boundaries of their sport, the backlash can be instant and cruel. While the conversation may start with Coco Gauff, it ultimately points to something much bigger about how athletes are portrayed, protected, and respected in modern sports culture.
Predicted Coco Gauff's downfall, and she won anyway. The tennis media establishment was so against Coco Gauff that they predicted that she would lose to the 361st player in the world in the semifinals. For context, Coco is ranked number 2 in the world. When have you ever seen anyone predict that the world number 2, a Grand Slam champion, was going to go down to 361 of anything? And before you say that this was some random sports writer making this prediction, it was not. It was the executive editor of Tennis Magazine, Steve Tigner. Tennis Magazine is the biggest tennis publication that there is.
The double standards become clear the moment you really look at the facts, which raises the real question. Why does this keep happening? Throughout 2024, large parts of the media pushed a narrative that Coco Gauff was having a terrible season, flooding headlines with words like struggling, slumping, and underperforming. But the reality told a completely different story. She reached the semi-finals of the Australian Open, made the final of the French Open, won major tournaments in Auckland, Beijing, and across China, and finished the year ranked number 3 in the world. For almost any other player, that resume would be celebrated as an outstanding season. For Coco, it was somehow framed as a disappointment.
Executive editor of Tennis Magazine was so angry that Coco won that he wrote the nastiest article describing her victory. Remember, this is the same guy that predicted that Coco would lose to the player ranked 361st in the world. He repeatedly described Coco as getting lucky. He called the match off kilter. He called the match scrappy and said that it wasn't a thing of beauty. And he even threw shade on Gauff's mental strength and her strokes, saying that patience and resilience were more important than the beauty of your technique in that match. What? Now it gets even worse than this, but this article is so bad that you would have thought that Steve Tigner is being paid by Coco's opponent to write this crap.
The media narrative fully erupted at the US Open after Coco Gauff lost to Emma Navarro and committed 19 double faults. From that moment on, that single match became the only story anyone wanted to tell. Headlines claimed her serve was broken, her confidence was shattered, and that she couldn't handle pressure. One bad serving day was turned into the defining moment of her entire season, overshadowing everything she had achieved before it. Tennis analyst Andy Roddick directly called out this pattern, pointing out that criticism seems to reach Coco much faster and with much more force than it does for other players. Coco herself summed it up best: the same results that earn praise for other players somehow get her crucified, proving that it's often the same performance but a completely different reaction depending on who's holding the racket.
Rather than say anything good about Coco, who won that second set in a hurry, he just chose to say that the ball was sailing on Sabalenka, as if Coco weren't even on the court. And of course, in the end, he downplayed Gauff's win by saying that even though it was technically an upset, it wasn't even a surprise. Now again, this is the same guy who said that she'd be losing to number 361 in the world because her game was evenly matched. He refuses to say the truth. Coco played exceptionally, and no one could have beaten her on that day.
At just 20 years old, Coco Gauff has already achieved what most professional tennis players never will. She's won a Grand Slam, reached the top 3 in the world rankings, and built a resume that places her in the sports elite. Yet somehow, that still isn't enough to shield her from being labeled a failure after a single tournament loss. Despite the noise, she keeps showing up, competing, and winning, and every time she does, the voices that spent months predicting her downfall seem to go strangely quiet. Her victories are treated like footnotes, while her losses dominate headlines, and once you notice that pattern, it becomes impossible to unsee. The contrast becomes even sharper when you compare how criticism is framed. When male players struggle with their serve or experience technical breakdowns, the conversation is analytical and almost sympathetic, focusing on mechanics and adjustments. When Coco faces the exact same issues, the language shifts completely. Suddenly it's about her mentality, her confidence, and whether she can handle the pressure of being a champion. It isn't the performance that changes, it's the narrative.
Tennis Channel, you need to fire your executive editor, Steve Tigner, because there is no way that he should be insulting about the greatest American champion of her generation. You cannot get upset that pickleball is surpassing tennis when you talk about statistically one of the greatest players ever at her age this way.
Coco Gauff is 20 years old. At an age when most people are still figuring out their lives behind closed doors, she's already a Grand Slam champion, a WTA finals winner, an Olympic flag bearer, and ranked among the top 3 players in the world. Yet despite these accomplishments, she faces a level of scrutiny and criticism that would overwhelm most adults. One tournament loss, one day with a weak serve, and the media headlines declare her a failure, her confidence questioned, her mentality dissected. Her victories are treated as footnotes, her setbacks dominate the narrative. This isn't just about tennis. It's about a systemic bias in sports coverage and public perception, particularly against young black female athletes. While male players like Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner are praised as rising stars even after poor matches, Coco is forced to defend herself against accusations that she has peaked too early. LeBron James can open schools, speak on politics, and use his platform to fight for justice without backlash, while Coco receives thousands of online comments telling her to stick to tennis. The scrutiny she faces is relentless, coordinated, and disproportionate, attacking everything from her play to her appearance, family, intelligence, and voice. She spends 30 minutes every single day just blocking people online, a dedicated fight against harassment that never stops. The double standard extends beyond criticism into major milestones. In 2024, Coco was named Team USA's flag bearer for the Paris Olympics, becoming the youngest American tennis player ever to earn that honor. Her peers voted for her, recognizing her leadership and accomplishments. But instead of celebration, social media erupted with doubt and disrespect. Critics questioned why she deserved it, asked why it wasn't someone else, and dismissed the recognition she had earned from those who knew her best. This pattern repeats with nearly every young black female athlete. Their achievements are minimized, their recognition questioned, and their voices stifled. Serena Williams faced the same treatment for years, Naomi Osaka experiences it today, and now Coco carries that same burden. The bias is evident even in how matches are analyzed. During her loss to Emma Navarro at the US Open, commentators focused overwhelmingly on Coco's errors rather than Navarro's excellence. Every missed shot, every double fault was dissected, while her opponent's skill and strategy were minimized. Compare that to male players, whose struggles are framed in context. Fatigue, injuries, opponent strength. Male athletes get patience and analysis. Coco gets judgment and character scrutiny. This framing shapes public perception and reinforces the narrative that young black women must perform perfectly at all times or be publicly condemned. Yet despite all this, Coco continues to rise. She made a coaching change, bringing in Matt Daly after parting ways with Brad Gilbert, and focused on her game. She dominated the China Open, reached the semifinals in Wuhan, and then made her ultimate statement at the WTA Finals in Saudi Arabia, defeating the world's #1 and #2 back-to-back to win the biggest tournament of the year. She didn't respond to critics online or engage in arguments. She let her tennis do the talking, and in doing so, she proved her place at the very top of the sport. Coco's story is about more than trophies and rankings. It's about resilience, mental strength, and refusing to let unfair scrutiny define her. It's about the disproportionate pressure placed on young black female athletes, who must work twice as hard for half the recognition and are punished for daring to have opinions beyond their sport. Her philosophy is simple. Play your game, show up, dominate, and let the results speak. She doesn't wait for fairness. She doesn't wait for the media or the public to acknowledge her. She just keeps winning, proving that excellence and perseverance are the ultimate response to bias and criticism. Coco Gauff's journey forces a broader question. Why do society and media allow this disparity to persist? Why are young black women in sports constantly held to impossible standards, their successes minimized and their failures amplified? Coco has already proven everything she needs to prove about her talent, her drive, and her character. Now, the focus must shift to the system that demands more from her than anyone else, and how long it will take for that to change. Until then, Coco's answer remains the same. Let the racket do the talking, keep winning, and keep showing up, because that is a clapback no one can ignore.